I pay tribute to the leadership of Japan in this. It's stepped up a great leadership role in the Indo-Pacific. They should be congratulated in reviving the TPP and allowing Australia to continue a great tradition of free and open trade in this region.
I thank the member for Brown. The question is the amendment be agreed to, and I call the member for Parkes.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I too rise to speak on the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for TPP Implementation Bill 2018. And these bills before the House are important steps in the implementation of Australia's obligations under the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, commonly known as the TPP-11. This agreement between Australia and 10 of our most important trading partners in the Asia-Pacific region is one of the most comprehensive trade agreements ever negotiated. This agreement continues the Morrison government's successful economic agenda, which has delivered economic growth and prosperity and created new jobs, and increased international trade and investment opportunities for our companies, large and small. The coalition government's single-minded commitment to this economic agenda has already delivered real outcomes for Australian exporters, in the form of the free trade agreements we have already concluded with our key North Asian trading partners, China, Japan and Korea. And this commitment reflects the clear priority this government will continue to give to maintaining and strengthening an open, transparent and efficient international trade environment. The TPP-11 makes our network of existing free trade agreements in the Asia-Pacific region and makes them even stronger, providing even greater access for our exporters to key markets such as Japan, Korea, ASEAN, New Zealand, Chile and Peru, and update existing provisions to reflect the latest best practices in FTAs. And probably more importantly, it brings additional major markets of Canada and Mexico into our FTA network, both of which are in the world's top 20 economies, and both, Mr Deputy Speaker, that are now being impacted by changes in the attitude of the US in that North American area. The countries covered by the TPP-11 have a combined GDP of Australian dollars 13.8 trillion and a population of close to 500 million consumers. These markets already take nearly 1/4 of all Australian exports, and by eliminating more than 98% of tariffs on our exports to this massive regional economy, the TPP-11 will open significant new opportunities for Australian businesses. This is why this agreement is incredibly important for rural and regional Australia, including the electorate of Parkes that I represent. Agreements such as the TPP-11 are critical to communities throughout rural and regional Australia, communities that are dependent on exports for their economic prosperity. Some specific examples of the significant benefits for our agricultural exporters, including for farmers in my electorate of Parkes, are: for beef exporters, Australian beef exports in 2017 $7.5 billion. Around 1/3 of TPP-11 countries the TPP-11 outcomes include accelerated tariff reductions in our beef exports to Japan, Mexico and Canada, including elimination of Canadian tariffs on our beef, currently at 26.5% within 5 years, and elimination of Mexican tariffs for our beef, currently up to 25% within 10 years. This is an important step forward for our exports into that part of the world. For lamb exporters, which is particularly important for the electorate I represent, 425 million in exports for lamb and mutton to the TPP-11 markets in 2017, which is 16% of total sheep and meat exports. Elimination of tariffs on sheep meat exports to Mexico within 8 years, and immediate elimination of sheep meat tariffs to all other TPP countries on entry into force. For our wool producers, immediate elimination of all remaining tariffs on raw wool into entry into force, and rules of origin with will drive greater demand within TPP-11 markets for high-quality yarns made from Australian wools. For cereals and grains, already $1.6 billion go to TPP markets, and the TPP-11 outcomes will improve significant improvements in market access for our exports of cereals and grains to Japan, including new quotas for wheat, barley and malt, elimination of Mexican tariffs on wheat, currently at 67% within 10 years, and on barley, currently 115% within 5 years. Immediate elimination of all Canadian tariffs on cereals and grains. This is incredibly important, Mr Deputy Speaker, as those two countries now are looking elsewhere to strengthen trading ties across the Pacific, and Australia is in a prime position to take advantage of this. For our pork producers who are doing it very tough at the moment, 71% of their exports already go to TPP 11 markets and is worth $88 million in 2017. So there will be significant reductions in pork tariffs to Japan, an elimination of all Malaysian pork tariffs within 15 years, immediate elimination of Mexico's pork tariffs. And for dairy, elimination of Japanese tariffs on some cheese products and reduction in expanded quotas on all remaining cheeses. New Japanese quotas for butter and skim milk, and new quotas on tariff reductions for ice cream yoghurt and whole milk powder, condensed milk and infant formula. Preferential access to the highly protected Canadian market, and new Mexican quotas for butter, cheese, milk and tariff elimination on yoghurt. For sugar growers, another sector that's in a tough spot at the moment, opportunities there. So immediate elimination of Japan's tariff on sugar, elimination of Canada's tariffs on refined sugar within 5 years, guaranteed share of Mexico's quota for raw sugar, and immediate elimination of Vietnam's in-quota tariffs on sugar. Cotton, another industry that's very important to the constituents that I represent. Elimination of all tariffs on Australian cotton exports, with most reductions occurring immediately. Our exporters will also benefit from new regional supply chains into the Japanese market. For example, clothing produced in Vietnam from Australian cotton will benefit from preferential tariffs under the TPP-11, increasing demand for our raw cotton. For rice growers, new quota access for Australian rice and rice flour to Japan, with a new 6,000 tonne quota growing to 8,400 tonnes after 12 years. Wine, a total which would be immediate elimination of Canada's wine tariffs, elimination of Malaysian, Vietnamese, Mexican wine tariffs over periods from 3 to 15 years. And it goes on. Horticultural exporters, extended out-of-season tariff on our orange exports to Japan, and elimination of all Japanese tariffs on orange over 7 years, elimination of Japan's tariffs on fruit juices over 10 years. I could go on, seafood and other issues. Mr Deputy Speaker, I've recently been to Thailand, Vietnam and recently in Singapore for the RCEP negotiations and in chatting with our neighbours in ASEAN. And I've got to say there is great excitement about the TPP-11. This will be the new gold standard of trade in the Pacific region. And other countries are very keen to take part and to join the 11 countries that have already been signatories to this. And indeed, in Bangkok about 6 weeks ago, when I was discussing this with my counterparts in the Thai government, they are looking to Australia to assist them through this process of being one of the first countries to be added on to the TPP-11, and also Japan is also playing a major role in helping Thailand as well. But it's not just agricultural products. There's more broadly, it provides opportunities across a broad range of manufactured goods, including iron and steel, aluminium, automotive parts, leather goods and paper products. For our service exporters, it delivers significant gains for our exporters of education services. Incidentally, education services now, I think, is number 3 in Australia in value of our exports. And once again, my discussions with our ASEAN neighbours is they are really keen to tap into our education system as they are upskilling their own workforces and own populations to step up to that next level of production and increase their own economies. They're looking to Australia's wonderful education system to help their economies out. And so there'll be significant gains for our exporters of education services, including our universities, vocational education institutions, school sectors and private training providers. New opportunities for exports of Australian financial services, including banking, insurance and financial management. Improved access for professional services from firms across accounting, engineering, architecture, legal services and consulting, providing greater transparency and predictability for this important sector. Incidentally, I met a representative of the music testers, I'm not sure what their title is, in Melbourne a couple of weeks ago. The people that do provide the testing for music students, they are looking at taking advantage of access to these other countries through the TPP-11. And so there's a lot of service industries that you would not think about are lining up, and they are part of other small and medium exporters, the first who will take advantage of this. SMEs are critical to Australia's economic growth and prosperity, generating over $1.8 trillion in sales and employing over 7 million Australians. So TPP-11 will make it easier for SMEs to establish new export markets and grow their businesses through tariff reductions, improved access to regional value chains, through common transparent trade, investment rules across the region which reduce the time, cost and complexity of doing this. But there is a need for Australia to move quickly. We already have 3 countries, Mexico, Japan and Singapore, have signed up. Within 60 days of 6 countries signing up, this trade deal comes into effect. It's very, very important for our exporters, for Australia, to be part of one of those first 6 countries. It's very important that we are there on the ground floor when this starts, and for our exporters to be right at the starting line. I have noticed there are some concerns from the opposition around labour market testing. Mr Deputy Speaker, I personally believe that their concerns are unjustified. Where we have previously made such commitments in FTAs, there have not been an influx of workers from these countries. For example, we have not seen an influx of workers into Australia following an entry into force of Australia's FTAs in North Asia, and that's the Japan, Korea and China. Also important to remember that we made temporary entry commitments in order to get better access for our service suppliers in return. This was an offensive interest for Australia, so it's a two-way thing, and was part of the deal which will result in an additional $15.6 billion in additional annual income by 2030, as per the report released by the Minerals Council last week. With skills testing, the TPP-11 does not change the skills and experience requirements that need to be met by electricians and other foreign workers applying to Australian workers. It's important to remember, Mr Deputy Speaker, that this doesn't overrule the regulations in this country. They still have primary force. So this means that workers from TPP-11 signatory countries, including electrical workers, remain subject to and must satisfy any skills assessment required by the visa process, which for electricians and other trades is administered by the Trades Recognition Australia. Workers from TPP-11 signatory countries also remain subject to and must satisfy licensing and registration processes required by state and territory governments, and the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade has already confirmed that TPP-11 does not oblige Australia to recognise the education or experience obtained and requirements met, or in licences of certifications granted in the territory of another TP party or non-party. So the level of skills that is acceptable in Australia does remain. This does not weaken that. So the assessment of skills, qualifications and employment backgrounds for electricians applying under temporary work visas, either under the FTA or otherwise, is part of the visa assessment process undertaken by the Department of Home Affairs. The Department of Home Affairs has also confirmed that the present process for assessment of skills, qualifications and employment backgrounds for any foreign workers, including the specific occupations listed in your letter, will not change as a consequence of TPP-11. The ISDS mechanisms will provide valuable protections to Australian investment overseas and still safeguards the government's ability to regulate the public interest and pursue legitimate public welfare objectives. TPP-11 contains explicit recognition of this right in addition to other safeguards. The TPP-11 also represents an opportunity for Australia to update a number of its investment arrangements with TPP-11 signatories through side levers with Peru, Mexico and Vietnam. Australia agreed to terminate decades-old bilateral investment agreements to replace them with modern standards by the TPP. And just finally, there is some concern about the US system of interested stakeholders. The US system of cleared advisors is long-standing and reflects the particular circumstances in the US. This process provides some stakeholder at a greater level than others. Australia's practice has been to maintain an open, inclusive and flexible approach to consultation, ensuring all stakeholders, not just vested interests, who want to continue to do so. Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker.